Okay, so welcome to another happiness class. This is a weekly interactive show where I want to hear what you think. So please ask questions at any time during the show. Check out past and future shows at bigquestionsanswered.com. This is a practical class that deals with personal and to global issues as everything affects our happiness. This week, the first half hour will be about technology, why it is good, why it goes wrong, and why we should be hopeful about it. The second half hour will be about any random questions you have about life. This week, I have my son Saleh joining as a guest and a debater. Everything I say is based on the tried and tested teachings of Islam. Islam is an inclusive religion, so you don't have to be a Muslim to learn from this show. Islam is also the most scientific and comprehensive thought system I know. Please do like the video to support the show. Right, so let's paste in the first bunch of stuff. So, um, inspiration. So I want to talk about how technology actually comes into existence. And I'm going to put it as a question: why should we be hopeful for the future? And it's not devoid of spirituality. There is a very important connection between technology and spirituality. I'll quickly read a verse from the Holy Quran, but it might not be obvious what it's about right now. So, and he, that is God, has created horses and mules and asses. I'm not sure what the difference is, quite frankly, that you may ride them, and a source of beauty. And he will create what you do not yet know. Okay. Um, so I'm going to give a sort of big picture thing first, and I'll get Saleh to give me his thoughts about it, or if he understands any of what I'm about to say. So, very briefly, reflecting on the quiet machinery of nature that keeps our fragile lives going shows us there is a God that is keeping a careful eye on us. From our oddly circular path around the sun, so that we are kept at a perfect distance from it, to the recycling of incredibly heavy water that we would quickly die without, there are endless needs of ours that are taken care of. We have not been left to fend for ourselves. Do you understand any of that, Saleh?
Yeah, especially that saying that God is always there to help, that we're
Mm.
never alone.
So, if your friends were listening to this, would they agree, or what do you think they would disagree about if they were not religious? Anything that comes to mind?
Mm. Not really, other than the fact that there's wars that happen and they slow down
Th-
human progression a lot.
Cool. So, bad things happen, wars happen, and how is God letting all those things happen? Is kind of the thought, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's not all perfect. Yeah, fair enough. Um, and that's because God gives us free will to mess things up or not. Is a short answer. Yeah. So good point. No, okay, so the next part, the next thing I want to say is in the verses above, that's the verses I mentioned. So I'm kind of reading from the summary text. Do check it out in the description below. I just mentioned about these creations that God promises to create. So in the verses above, which is part of a longer list of things that human beings depend on. So it's a longer, the verse is not by itself. God has promised to create according to our needs. So 1500 years ago, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, gave detailed descriptions of planes, large ships that carry mountains of food, and trains. So these are all things that are useful for us, and he gave detailed description of. We can go into it if you like, but any thoughts about that, or what do you think your friends might say if they heard me say that to them?
Mm. I don't really think it'd be that believable since that all of that happened so many years ago before any of those stuff even thought about existing. So
Sure. So they would say like, okay, how is it possible that anybody could have said those things? So I can talk about some of the prophets very briefly, right? So I'll talk about the planes. So they say that there's going to be an antichrist. So lots of religions say in the latter days, in the last stage of humanity, there's going to be an antichrist. And in Islam, we call it the Dajjal, which means in Arabic for the great deceiver. Okay, and he would go on a donkey, and this donkey would be a very strange donkey because it would be silver, or some people call it very bright white. But you can think of it as metallic, right? Because they didn't have really metal in those days, not much. Um, and so one of the forms this donkey would take, this huge donkey, because of the Antichrist would be huge himself, and it's all metaphorical. It would have the span between its ears will be 40 cubits, some say 70 cubits, depending on the size. It's kind of like 60 to 100 feet or something, right? Okay, and it would it would take its passengers in its belly. So it wouldn't just be for the Antichrist. It would take it in its belly rather than on its back, and it would eat fire. Okay, and it would take a leap from the east or the west and land in the east. So that would be interesting, and it'd be comfortable inside, and there would be announcements before it leaves. So does that sound like a plane to you, Osada?
Yeah.
Yeah, and these are all written down a long time ago, and people can check there. And again, check out the description in below where I give references to all these things. And there's also some other interesting things about like large ships that carry mountains of food, but they carry mountains of food to only those people who worship them, the Antichrist, right? So to poor people, they'll say, "Look, here's mountains of food. You can have it. I'll give it for you free." Um, and this is when the this particular donkey of the Antichrist takes a new form, where it's half in the sea and half outside the sea, and it carries mountains of food, as being described as. And so what does that mean to you if something is worshipping? I don't. Have you ever heard of these prophecies before? I'm not sure if I mentioned them to you before.
Mm, I heard of the first one,
The
but
second
not
one.
the
So that's
second.
good that you haven't, okay? Because I want to see if you can figure out what kind of situation do you know of now where to get mountains of food for free, you have to worship these antichrists or these materialistic bosses, as it were. Can you think of a situation like that?
Uh,
It's called humanitarian
stuff
aid.
like yeah,
Have you heard of humanitarian aid?
yeah, but
It's not actually for free. Okay, they
mm,
have to accept lots of rules and control by Western governments to get that aid. So that's what it's all about. So that's just a quick description of that situation. Okay,
mm,
and so the Antichrist is actually the Western countries, and there's a lot of explanation about that. That's another whole different topic. But anyway, next last bit about how um, uh, creative people actually create things, and it's very you'll be surprised. Okay, so God or some inspirational force is a particularly real experience for creatives. Okay, creative people, a topic discussed in one of the most popular TED talks. So TED talks are like by talks led by leaders of the world, like in different areas of work, right? All sorts of creative things and non-creative, whatever. Okay, so one of the most popular TED talks, so lots of creative people watch these talks. Okay, is called "Your Elusive Creative Genius." Okay, create, and it's about this uh, special force that people use to create. Okay, creatives are not just painters. Einstein said, "When the answer is simple, God is speaking." Okay, giving us the sense that it is God that suddenly brings the impossible to light, makes the impossible, like, I don't know how to work this out, and suddenly, oh, go, I've worked it out. How did that happen? That's God, right? That's what
mm,
Einstein says. God helps in all sorts of strange ways. Steve Jobs, the founder of and creative leader of Apple, famously said that you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. So he's got this belief system that somehow the dots coming together means that things somehow work out. Okay, so basically, by dots coming together, Steve Jobs was referring to how things magically work out. Elon Musk's someone who doesn't follow religion. Has amazing luck that saved his business one day before it collapsed, when NASA gave him money to continue his business that were made to save Earth, and get us going on the interplanetary lifestyle humans were promised in the Holy Quran. So the Holy Quran talked about us living on more than one planet 1500 years ago. Elon, and there's links to that as well. Elon prayed before his first unmanned mission or space flight. Sorry, unmanned? I should manned. That's incorrect. I've read. But anyway, there's a bit more I'm going to go on about. But the point is, what do you think? What do you think? There's only 7 seconds to say what you think.
I think it's very interesting how everything's predicted. So
Hmm.
people describe God in different ways or have
Hmm.
different experiences with God. So it's
Cool. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Um, all religions talk about the same God. Whoops, I pasted the wrong one. Let's try again. Evil. Ha, we're going to talk about evil now. Let's do that. Okay, so right there we go. And yep. Okay, so next thing is I put it as a question first. If technology is so great, why are things going so wrong? And again, I will read a verse of the Holy Quran, but it might not be so completely obvious straight away. But it's kind of relating to a similar thing we were talking about before, about the Antichrist. Allah, that is God, and Allah is actually an ancient name that have been used by different religions. So if you go to the Middle East, Christians and Jews call God Allah as well. Okay, Allah is not one-eyed, and behold, the Dajjal, that's an Arabic word for the great deceiver, is blind in the right eye, and his left eye would be like a floating grape. So just one quote from Prophet Muhammad about this, the Antichrist, but there's so many that need to be put together to really get the full picture. So it's a bit odd, the right eye is a floating grape, but basically in other quotes is being described as extremely bright eye. Okay, the right eye, and it's all very meaningful, but we'll go into that in a minute. So here's my kind of introductory comment that I'm interested in what you think. Technology misused magnifies our destructiveness. So hopefully that's written there. Oh, I put it in the wrong order. That's number 2. Never mind. Okay, let's put it right. All right, let's put it in the right order so people got it. So I'll cut it. But you can think about that. Technology
I think that's
misuse.
true because lots of people focus on the negatives and then post on social media because those are the types of stuff that gets attention. Not really, like good stuff gets attention, but not really as much as the negatives. People always try to find negatives and everything.
Yeah, and so what I'm trying to get at on that one is we have long been a destructive species, like for a very long time, but it's only lately that our increasingly powerful technologies have magnified our destructiveness, accelerating all the damage we've wreaked on Earth and ourselves. So we've been destroying the Earth, but actually also making ourselves really unhappy. So you agree with that. Let me go to the next point, which is actually now point 2. Let me just get rid of that extra space. Am I getting a bit too obsessive about that? So you can see a bit more, everybody. Okay, so number 2, it is understood. This is now really referring to that verse or that quote from Prophet Muhammad about the great deceiver or the Antichrist. Okay, over there. It is understood that the great deceiver or Antichrist, which represents the so called Christian nations, is, and I say so called because they're not really Christian anymore. They're not really practicing Christianity like Jesus taught. Jesus didn't really teach Christianity, but that's another topic anyway. So the Antichrist represents Christian nations, so called Christian nations, okay, is blind spiritually. That's what the idea of the left the right eye being blind is all about. Okay, is blind spiritually, but is extremely powerful in materialistic things. This is a situation the Western nations face. We have materialistic intelligence but lack spiritual intelligence, turning the good potential of technology into bad. We take amazing devices that should connect us, then use them to create a fake persona on the internet, and we instantly become disconnected and lonely. We take petrol and use it for war. We do good things with technology, but we need to get the balance right if we need to be happy, want to be happy. What do you think?
Mm. Yeah, I think that is true since lots of countries and different governments are trying to use technology for the wrong things. So they believe that other countries are doing it for the wrong things. For
Mm,
example, if China advances their military, America's going to do the same thing. So they don't
right,
even think about it. They just keep on advancing because they think the other person's going to do more. So
cool,
everything's turning more competitive against each other instead of
right.
having like some teamwork aspect.
Sure. And that's what I'm trying to get at in that point is that the missing the real problem is spirituality. Spirituality is really about being kind and knowing the big picture of what we're doing on this planet and things like that. And so that's the reason why we're doing the bad things with
Mm.
technology. So cool. Okay, and finally, oh, there's an extra space there as well. Let's move that. Um, so we will learn but only we will learn our lesson about needing spirituality, but only after learning humility through very painful lessons. Whatever I tell you now in the show is simple, not something to argue with, and to your benefit, but most will ignore it or sometimes bother to argue with it, so they ignore it or argue sometimes. That is arrogance, to think you can get away with ignoring God, because it's not really me. I'm just, passing on a message, as it were. Okay. The most likely way any sense will be knocked into you, as in the general viewer, will be World War III, where you lose everything, including your pride, because it's not going to be a nice war. Yeah, you're not going to have a house. Loads of things that people you're going to die. Then you'll figure out that you can't ignore God. Then, when you are humble enough, you will listen. Any thoughts?
Mm. Yeah, I agree with that because if you have no pride, then there's nothing really stopping you from not focusing on material things, and it can help you focus more on mit- like more spiritual things. Also, that people like shadow monks and stuff barely have anything, so all of their focus is primarily on spirituality instead of materials.
Sure. But actually, spirituality is not against, living comfortably. Yeah. In fact, if you follow spirituality, and part of spirituality is using a proper economic system, so Islam talks about ways so that everybody can be well off. Okay, it's very easy actually. There's the reason why there's only a few billionaires and they have like 90% of the wealth, right? And 10% of the people have like, well, sorry, 90% of the people have 10% of the wealth, sort of thing, or 50% to be more accurate, something like that, right? It's because the whole system is really messed up and there's systems for that. So what I'm trying to say is spirituality is not against having stuff. Okay. All I'm saying is the things I'm saying are not actually complicated. And people argue with them because they think they can get away with it, not because they really argue it. It's like if I say God exists and there's like, look at the probability of even a drop of blood coming into existence. People, atheists, know that the probability is like 0% that it could have happened by any sort of accident. So yet they will still say God doesn't exist, right? And the reason why they think they can do that is because they think they can get away with it. Okay. Now, you don't have to wait till World War III to get away with it. Okay. You atheists are more miserable than most people, and there's a good reason for that. I talked about that in a previous show. One thing that all people need, doesn't matter what they are, atheists or religious people or something in between, right? Everybody needs meaning, and you cannot have meaning, okay, if you don't believe in God, because God creates meaning. Why does God create meaning? Because the opposite of not believing in God is something called nihilism. Nihilism means everything is random, just happened by accident. Now, if everything just happened by accident and is random, okay, that means there's no pattern or predictability in the future. So you can't think into the future. Okay, it's all random, it's all meaningless. Anything you do doesn't make any difference, sort of thing. And that's why people get depressed. And there's a lot of other things like that. So people are too arrogant. They're not listening. They think they can get away with it. They're punished. They're getting punished today from inside themselves, called depression, and they will get punished tomorrow when we have World War III, because that's the way we're going. There's no reason to believe we're not going that way. Okay, so just leave it at that. Cool. And the last point I want to make, or the last section, is hope. So after that mention of World War III, sounds quite dreary. Let's move on to something a bit more hopeful. Okay. Right. So hope. Let's put it as a question to focus on. How do we fix the problems we've got ourselves into? This is a quote from Prophet Ghulam Ahmad, the promised guide of the latter days. So we are in the latter days. Latter days, by the way, means the last 7,000 years of humanity. You might wonder if that's true or not, but anyway. And let's hear his quote. The task for which God has appointed me is that I should remove the malaise, that means the bad or ill feelings, that afflicts the relationship between God and his creatures. Okay, so this is actually in a different language originally. It's been translated from Urdu, I think. Anyway, my introductory comment, after you can just bear that in mind, that quote at some point, or we'll just look at it later on. Our problems were predicted long ago, and so were their solutions. When Prophet Muhammad said a materialistic giant would appear in our age, that Antichrist, he also said a prophet would be raised to destroy it. The giant has arrived, and the prophecies regarding the prophet have also been fulfilled. He was to arrive, this prophet, in a place east of Damascus, and the sun and the moon would be eclipsed for him in the month of Ramadan, so Islamic month. Many other prophecies have been fulfilled for him. The prophet's name is Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, peace be upon him. Any thoughts? Why would say your friends object? Let's think about that. Let's put it from there. Your immediate sort of thoughts. What would they say? Imagine you said that to them. What would they say back to you? Like,
It could be coincidence.
coincidence. Cool. Exactly. That's great that you said that, right? So bear in mind there's so many prophecies and it'll take ages to go by. Let's just focus on like the sun and the moon one, right? So the sun and the moon one was really specific, not just the sun and moon being eclipsing in the month of Ramadan. It's actually more accurate than that. It was like on certain days, in the middle of this day, in the middle and the end of that day. I can't remember exactly. Again, you can it's very easy to find, just search promised Messiah eclipse sun moon on Google and you'll find out the exact prophecy and how it exactly happened. So just to briefly answer that is, imagine you said, I am this promised guide of the latter days, and then people said to you, well, there's a prophecy, have you fulfilled it? Okay, and the prophecy says, the eclipse of the sun and the moon has to be exact this time. Like that is incredibly lucky for you. I mean, I don't think you would be brave enough, and I wouldn't be brave enough to just go, you know what, I'm the promised guide of the latter days, and this is going to happen. The sun and the moon is going to be eclipsed for me, and it happened. So,
Yeah, but someone
and
can just wait for it to happen and then say it.
Yeah, but they would have to wait. Like it had the last time it happened was like about 10,000 years before or something, and it's never happened. So part of the prophecy is not that it never happened before, but it's never happened as a sign for somebody, right?
Mm.
So you would have to wait 10,000 years. So it's pretty unlikely that it would happen for you. Now that we've got maths and computers and things like that, we can actually prove that it happened. First of all, you can run the computer. It's very, you can just find it on like on the internet. It's very easy to get a, was it called astronomers, there's all sorts of websites that can calculate when the eclipses happen. You can check that it happened, okay, and you can actually predict future ones now with computers. But at that time, 100 years ago, when the Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, peace be upon him, came, there were no such computers. um, so anyway, that's that. So it's good point, and that was the answer. Second point is, um, how will this prophet fix our problems? Okay, so we got a prophet. Will he wave a magic wand? All prophets reform the people who are the root of the problem. The people, our people, society is the root of the problem. So, as he said above, his mission is to fix the bad feeling that has arisen towards God. We have stopped trusting organized religion for good reason, and Mirza Ghulam Ahmad will fix that by getting us back to the original teachings of God. Once our relationship with God is back in order, it will lead to solving the secondary problem of division in the human family. We are all God's kids. When we realize that, then there is a chance we would take our fingers off the self destruct button. Division is setting fire to personal, family, social, and international relations, setting fire literally through wars and metaphorically through pain, which we are trying to forget through the drug of unsustainable materialism. They're all pretty long words there, Saleh. I don't know if you understood all of that. Do you
Mm.
understand any of that? I could summarize
Basically,
bits.
it's like since we are all like thinking that we are different, even though we're not really that different, since we're all humans, that
Hmm.
we're competing against each other and trying to show who's better. Instead, if you work together, stuff would be like much easier and much less stressful. As everyone else would be happier.
That's right. And the thing that is making us think we're all strangers and not part of one human family, the beginning of fixing that problem is knowing there's a God and that we are all children of God and know what God wants from us. Yeah. And as I said, it's not complicated to realize God must exist. So there are many ways in which Mirza Ghulam Ahmad will make it clear that God exists by showing lots of signs, showing signs in your own life today. He's passed away, but there is a community that exists now. And so you can not just see signs, but also get logical proofs. Why? So it's bringing back the true teachings of all religions. All religions came from the same source, but lots of man-made teachings were thrown in, and we can show that as well. So Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, the promised guide of the latter days, wrote loads of books to clarify what happened. So, for example, what happened to Jesus? Did he really float off into the sky? Was he really God? Well, we can prove from the Bible that he said he's not God. And he, for example, promised that he would go to see the rest of the Jewish people. And the rest of the Jewish people were not just in the Israel, Palestine sort of area. He went all the way to Afghanistan, whatever, and this Muzaram Ahmed showed that his grave is in Kashmir, and it's there now, and there's so much proof, and loads of people visit that, and there's a lot of proof that he is in fact that. So anyway, last point: inner and outer peace is what will untie us from our addiction to materialism. We will get We will only get that when we submit our egos, the evil whisperers that entice us to do stupid things. That's what our ego does, makes us do stupid things. And instead, listen to God, who invites us to our true calling, the infinite journey of being at one with God, a journey into light. And light upon light. Allah, that is God, the one true God, guides to his light whoever he wills. That's a verse of the Holy Quran. Okay, so we're on to the next stage, the second half hour. Please do comment, question. Oh my gosh, I haven't seen the questions. Sorry about that. Oh my gosh. That so let's quickly answer some of the questions here. Um so is the Dajjal the same as the Antichrist? Yes. And anything else here? Are you basically saying that Islam is not imposing restrictions, rather it's imposing a way of life? It's not imposing anything. Okay, so thank you for the great question, first of all. I can kind of tell you're maybe a Christian from your logo, like it down there. It looks like maybe Orthodox Christianity or something you might get from Egypt. Um, so Islam actually says, for example, to people who are Christians and Jews, just don't even necessarily have to convert. First of all, the task is unite on what you have in common, and that is you believe in one God. So even though some Christians will say they believe in a Trinity, they also say they believe in one God, and so do the Jews. So unite in that thing. When you unite on that thing, you start finding other ways in which you unite. So it's not about imposing anything. So Islam also teaches, and this is all from the Holy Quran, by the way, the guidebook, the rules of Islam, as it were, says there's no force in religion. It doesn't matter which religion or no religion, you are not forced to do anything. So I'm kind of looking into the interesting words you've used. So imposing restrictions. Sure. So you could say when you go to the gym or something, you're imposing restrictions on yourself by saying, I am going to do 50 or whatever they're called. What are these called when you do
Curls,
reps? Curls,
bicep
right?
curls.
Okay. Whatever, curls, right? Okay. You're imposing restrictions on yourself to do good for your own self, right? But you don't have to. You don't have to go to the gym. You don't have to listen to the teachings of Islam. You don't have to listen to teachings of Christianity. Okay. But um it's good for you, right? That's the benefit. You don't have to. You've been given free will. That's what the Quran says. You've been given free will. It's up to you what you want to do. God says, if I wanted to enforce my will, I could have done it easily, right? So of course God could have enforced his will. So there's no imposing either. So I'm trying to look more into what you're saying here. Basically, you're saying that Islam is not imposing restrictions, rather it's imposing a way of life. So, so there you go. So imposing wouldn't be the right word. It's a choice, and you can follow the teachings of Islam or try the teachings of Islam out by, even without becoming a Muslim, just try it out. In fact, you will find that if you're a Christian, you'll be um, practicing the Christianity far better by following the teachings of Islam, because what's happened, and you might not be aware of this, is after Jesus left, you can say he went to the sky, or I say he went to Afghanistan and fulfilled his promise that he made in the Bible. You can see that he said he's going to see the rest of the tribes of Israel. There were 12 tribes, you probably know. Yeah, that's not 12. 12 is, okay. But only two of them were in Judea, which is modern day Israel, Palestine, sort of thing, right? So unless he's a liar, he went and saw those other places. But anyway, I'm kind of getting distracted. He went somewhere, right? He went to the sky or went to those other places, the other tribes, okay? And after he left, this is well known, established, that he left his brother James in charge. Okay. And about 60 or 30 years later, some guy called Paul came along. Christians call him Saint Paul, and he turned the whole religion upside down. Okay. And he was arguing and an enemy of James, who's the brother of Jesus and the person left in charge of Christianity. Or he didn't call it Christianity because Jesus said he was just a Jew, but anyway, a Jewish prophet. So if you follow Islam, you'll be far closer, because if you look at Mary, for example, she wears a veil. Okay, and Orthodox Christians do that as well in Greece and places like that. So also, the way Jesus used to pray, he used to put his, if you go to the description before he um, went on the cross, he was praying the way Muslims do, with his face on the ground. Okay, there's so many things that he used to fast. Okay, do Christians fast nowadays? He doesn't. People don't fast now. Christians don't fast. They just um, give up chocolate or something during Lent. Yes, if they do that at all nowadays, right? Okay, but Muslims fast, right? They Jews would do it for 40 days. Muslims do it for about 30 days, one lunar month. So you will be much closer to Islam if you were following this way of life. And I do like that, like you said, it's a way of life, because it's not just something you do on Sunday or whatever. It's every day, because that's what the world is looking for. The world is looking for solutions for the world, like how do you save the environment? Islam has got that, but also how do you live every day? You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. Um, so the world is looking for how to not be depressed. People are seriously depressed now. Depression is going through the roof. So you need a way of life that gets you out of that. And Islam has so many tried and tested solutions for that, and incredibly small things that are really important. So the first thing that came to my mind, and now I'm coming back to it, in terms of you would become a better Christian if you followed Islam, is that a major part of Christianity, right from the Ten Commandments, is to, I mean, in a limited way, the Ten Commandments say basically be nice to your neighbor. Okay, it's like don't run away with your neighbor's wife, which is really basic. Yeah, don't steal from your your neighbor or something. Yeah, okay, this is a really basic level, but Islam goes like a million% more than that, right? Islam says things like, if your neighbor says you're good, you are good. If your neighbor says you're bad, you're bad. Okay. If you have food, okay, share it with your neighbor. Okay. There's so many things about being neighborly, and now neighborliness is incredibly important in our Western lives, where the biggest killer in Western society is loneliness. Okay, why are we lonely? First of all, we don't keep family relationships because they're not considered important. The reason why they're not considered important, because everybody's chasing materialism. There's no problem with getting stuff, but getting hypnotized by it ruins your whole life. Okay, that's one thing. And the other part of it is people are not even friends with the people next to them, next to the house. So just give you an idea of what I do in my street. I'm probably the most well-known person in my street, as well as my family, right? Because when there's Christmas, we, the Muslims, give chocolates to everybody on the street. Well, all the Christians on the street, right? All the people celebrating Christmas. When it's Eid, we give presents to everybody in the street, right? Okay, nobody else does that at all, right? Nowhere close. Somebody had a funeral today. Another thing, a rule in Islam is that if so, our neighbor had a funeral. Somebody passed away, right? And a rule in Islam is, if you're the right of a neighbor, it doesn't matter if they're Muslim or not, is that you go to his funeral, right? So that is making you a better Christian if you follow this way of life. Any thoughts, Saleh? Like, do you want to, any questions on behalf of the viewers, make it easier for them to understand this last minute of this particular
Mm,
question?
not really. I think you explained that pretty well.
Cool. Yeah. So let me think about, what else does Islam teach that would make you a better Christian, for example. I'm just saying it from a better Christian point of view, just because I've had a feeling that Jenna was a Christian, and I tried to make it very specific. I mean, there's so many rules, but the idea of a neighbor, by the way, is in Islam is actually, even if you're traveling, the person you're traveling with is your neighbor. The person you're at friends, if you're next to a person at work, that person is your neighbor. Then and if you can be friendly with them, I find that I don't even like going to work in companies anymore because so much politics. I just prefer to be self-employed. Um, but because people are mean to each other, and if they were nice to each other, it would be a much nicer place. People actually like going to work more. Anyway, cool. So sorry for missing out your questions. I think I need a better setup. Maybe I have to figure that one out. I was looking at my script and stuff. But anyway, thank you so much for your questions. Let me just quickly, if you got any more questions, that's great. Otherwise, I'm going to post this question. Let's do it right now. This is something I thought Saleh would be interested in. And let's make a space as well. There we go. All right. So, is exercise the key to happiness? Um, and so, this is something I've heard different places. And I'll quickly quote from Prophet Muhammad: Your body has a right over you, your eyes have a right over you, and your wife has a right over you. Okay, whoops, did I copy more than one thing? And paradise is the abode of the generous. Okay, cool. I love both of those. Normally, I try to just quote one. In fact, generally, I find it quite hard to just have one quote in isolation to answer a question, but I just put in one quote. Um, so first of all, the first thing over here was given advice to a particular person who was married, who was kind of going over the top and not sleeping much. He was like kind of praying all night, okay, and he wasn't taking care of himself, and it wasn't being, giving his wife any attention or anything. He thought that was spirituality, so he went over the top, and so Prophet Muhammad said, get some balance, yeah. Um, but why is that an answer to is exercise the key to happiness? So I want to give the first answer, and that kind of makes sense. And then you can give me your thoughts on it, Saleh. My
Mm.
first answer is people who are elite athletes, if exercise was the key to happiness, they should be the happiest. But if you talk about probably the greatest Olympian of our modern times, I think Mark Phelps, something like that, Phelps, I can't remember. Okay, the greatest swimmer, basically. He is depressed. He was depressed. He is depressed. He was very depressed while swimming. Okay, so and no psycho, so it's clearly not the case that exercise is the key to happiness. But does it mean you don't exercise? No, that's another thing. It doesn't mean just because you can exercise, if you do a lot of exercise and you get depressed, doesn't mean you don't do any exercise at all. That's kind of silly to jump from one side to the opposite side, right? But the other thing I'm going to quickly say before I let you speak, Salah, is um, no psychologist will tell you exercise is the key to happiness. They'll say it's good for you, it creates positive chemicals. But what people don't know is what psychologists have said for about 50 years through their experiments about what does make you happy. And one of the greatest things, a psychologist called Viktor Frankl, he wrote in his book, Man's. Um, Man's search for meaning. Okay, basically, meaning is what makes you happy. If your life makes sense, then you're happy. And very few people think their lives make sense. 50% of people in England think their jobs are completely meaningless or pointless. Okay, so you're not going to be happy if you have that kind of job. So that's just giving you a picture of what's going on. What I haven't even talked about this second quote, or even completed this one yet. But any thoughts, Saleh,
I think
about
there's a
is
difference.
exercise key to happiness?
I think there's a difference between being an athlete and training at a professional level. At that point, it's not exercise; it's basically life. But and my second point is exercise helps with happiness, but it isn't the only thing for happiness. There's nothing that is the only way to happiness. Like everything has to work together in order to provide happiness. But exercise
Cool.
is one of the keys to it.
Cool, agreed. Yeah. So I try to do my small bits of exercise regularly. I go for walks, and people might say that's not really exercise. And my son Salah's got me doing press ups as well, right? Um, but yeah, so that if you don't have good bodily health, you cannot be happy, right? Or you absolutely struggle to be happy because in Islam, your soul and body are deeply connected. Okay, so you can do some sort of experiments to try to understand that. For example, if you fake crying, so you put your body through an experience, okay, then your soul, what I mean by the soul is kind of your feelings, your true feelings, right? Okay, the things that really where your happiness comes from, spirituality, your soul, and all those things are connected. If you make your body do something like fake crying, you actually start feeling sad. Okay. And vice versa. You can feel sad and you can start crying, right? So the point of saying that is they're deeply connected. So if your body is unhealthy, it will affect your soul according to Islam. So there is an importance to um being fit, and that's why, like this thing says here in the beginning, your body has a right over you is one part of that. You have to take care of yourself, but that is, like you said, Saleh, is not the only thing. um, so let me see. Oh, I need to get rid of some of these, but never mind, I'll get rid of. Don't click on the dodgy looking um, comments with the short ones. Do not click on them. Uh, Whatever. Okay, never mind. Let's get rid of one more. Okay. All right. So, um, and let's undo that. Okay. All right. Anyway, so as I was saying, that's only part of it. What makes you happy and what gives meaning to your life? First of all, you have to have the beginning of meaning, which is there's a God who's got a plan for you, right? If your life is just like to make lots of money, you know deep down that you're not going to take it after you've done 80 years on this planet or something, which is the average lifespan. You're not going to take it anywhere. And people who follow just having money are not happy. Yeah, it kind of, you basically, what your body does is called homeostasis in different ways. You can have mental homeostasis and physical homeostasis, where your body just gets used to situations. Or so the more stuff you get, the more you just get used to it. It doesn't mean you don't try to get more stuff, but do it in line with the stuff that really makes you happy. So if you spend your whole life just ignoring all your family and ignoring everybody and just making money, you're going to be really unhappy, because the stuff that actually makes you happy is connection with people. And again, it's not me saying that, this is what psychologists say. You need connection, and not just talking random conversations. You need meaningful conversations. So things like this show will make you happier, because your body needs to hear deep things, meaningful things, what to do with my life sort of things. Okay, so that's part of it. So, and how you get that meaning is not just by thinking things, but by doing good things. So getting back to this, once you've taken care of your body a little bit, and you know get good sleep. That's what the idea of your rights. Your eyes have a right over you, because that's kind of the background to this particular saying. Like, sleep is really important for you. Okay, get a decent amount of sleep, at least 6 hours. 8 hours is kind of like a nice comfortable one, depending on your age actually. Okay, and then not just your wife, but generally everybody close to you and around you also has a right over you. And when you are kind to them, so I have to be kind to my kids as well, right? Okay, then you will feel happier when you do your responsibility. People think that they're going to be happy when they get their rights. Everybody's shouting about rights, 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 rights. Okay, that's good. You should have some rights, yeah. Okay, but that's not the thing that really makes you happy. The stuff that makes you happy are responsibilities. When you do them, your life seems meaningful. And the last thing I'm going to quickly say, and then I'll give you a chance, is the short version of happiness is be generous, be good to other people, but obviously in balance by taking care of your body. Any thoughts, Saleh? Before you got 30 seconds on that.
Okay, basically, the part where you said be generous gives you happiness, yeah? In order to be generous, you have to be something, you have to have something to be generous with. So I think people that work really hard in their lives, so do some job that they don't like, it's a sacrifice, but they get the money, they can share it to their kids, friends, or family, and give them happiness. And then in their last years when they retire, they could also spend time with their family. So it gives happiness in the end. So
Sure. My
some
short
people
answer
think,
is you don't need much to be generous, but I agree with you also that you can do it in balance as well, I would say. Yeah. There's some people,
yeah,
there's lots of poor people who are very happy, and I've seen poor people much happier than rich people just because they give the little things that they do have. And there's a more complicated reason why generally I found that people in poorer countries are happier, but that's a bit complicated for a 1 second explanation. Let's talk about this one. So I'm kind of a big fan of a guy called Gary Vee. Is a YouTuber, but also he's a real life business person. But he's a YouTuber, but that's like he does it kind of on the side. Um, so curiosity and humility are massive, he says. Okay, but there's kind of a part of a longer explanation. It goes something like, if you want to be successful in life, so this is how he says, you need to be both curious and humble. Okay, and I thought that's a really interesting thing to say because that sounds something like Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "A shy person and an arrogant one will fail in the pursuit of knowledge." Okay, so when Gary V says you got to be curious, it means that he thinks a lot of people are just kind of shy of checking out new ideas. Yeah, they're like, and the reason why they're kind of shy is because they think they're going to mess up. Like when you try out new things, you're a beginner. Okay. And so you need that humility as well. The reason why you need humility, and most people don't learn or learn very slowly in life or really hamper their learning, is because it's a really weird thing, okay, that adults do. And they pretend that they know it all. Like, how can you know it all? That's ridiculous. I'm learning every single day. Like when I do these shows, I'm learning from these shows, right? Okay, I'm studying all the time. Um, and but this is an actual thing. So you can see this, especially in the debate with anti-vaxxers versus vaxxers, right? People are like pretending they know it all, right? And they're not even listening to each other. They refuse to listen. This is my experience. So I'm going on a WhatsApp group, and I'm not even allowed to talk about how there could be problems with the idea that the vaccines are going to solve all our problems. But more and more evidence is coming out that that is not going to solve our problems. But I'm not even allowed to talk about it because people feel hurt by an idea. You know what I mean? So this is a strange thing about human beings, and that's why I like what Gary Vee is saying here: is that you got to be humble if you want to learn, but also uh, curiosity is good. But I think I like the quote from Prophet Muhammad a bit more. He says, "A shy person and an arrogant one." So you kind of have to be somewhere in between. Any thoughts, Salah?
hmm, I think one side, if two people are arguing, you can't just always say the other person doesn't know humility. Maybe like you yourself have to learn humility, not the other people. So it's not really up to us to judge. So both sides have to be able to feel humility. Otherwise, one side, like, it's not going to be equal. Like, unless if it's balanced, then like, people are gonna struggle arguing with each other because everyone will think that they are right. But when it's
Sure.
balanced, people would learn to understand what they mean to each other.
So what I mean by being humble is like I'll give you an example. It's like I might just put certain facts there, and instead of answering the facts, they will just like insult you. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm,
And they will talk about other things, but they won't answer the question that was given. Okay, that's not very humble.
yeah.
That's what I mean, right? And that's exactly what happens a lot of the time. Like especially this debate with, but the vaxxers versus anti-vaxxers is just an example of all the division that's been happening for a long time. Okay, and it comes from a lack of humility and the strange belief that we know it all. Like, you might be wrong, I might be wrong, right? Anything, go in that you know go in the comment section, tell me something that I might not know. Who knows? I don't know everything. I've just got these. I consider myself a nursery school, or if you're American and listening, kindergarten school teacher um on happiness and spirituality, right? There's loads of stuff I don't know. I'm just telling you the basic things I do know, right? Or I think I do know. You could correct me. Who knows, right? Okay. But these are things that have been tried and tested and seem to work in so many places, so many people, including myself, right? So it works for me. Hopefully, it worked for you. Um, and so I like that Gary V is also making it. This is it's like he's making it like the key to success. It's not just like learning is something you do in school. It should be like doing it all the time. So the reason why I'll kind of give a bit more feedback on or kind of background to what he does. He tries to figure out what's the next big thing in technology, and he tries to invest in it. So he was an early investor in, I think, Twitter and things like that, when nobody thought it was big, and nobody thought it was a big deal, right? So he made loads of money like that. And so the way you might think, oh, obviously I should invest in this company called Twitter. The only people, most of the time, people don't realize how great something is, because they're so convinced of the way they currently think about things. Like, I thought Twitter was a stupid idea, right? And then it became really popular, right? I'll tell you something I thought was a stupid idea when a student came to me first about it. YouTube. Well, I'm on YouTube now, right? Because at that time I thought, how can YouTube be any good? Because I rather watch something made professionally, right? Okay, by some proper TV studio and all this kind of stuff, right? And maybe they're just talking rubbish. But now YouTube is like the place where everybody goes, and nobody watches normal TV anymore. Why do only old people generally watch normal TV? Because normal TV seems to be controlled by very rich people, and they seem to just be propaganda machines for governments and things like that. So that's why people go to YouTube instead. Now YouTube's got a bit of a problem, is getting a lot of you know um what do you call it when people stop your videos get taken down,
Strikes.
or something like that. Anyway, so rich people controlling what we think, again, on YouTube. But anyway, but generally I was so wrong, right? So maybe I needed to be more humble and see the alternative perspective, right? So
Mm.
yeah, curiosity and humility are massive. That's his simple way of saying it. And he makes a ton of money, right? So he must have got something right, hopefully. Um, yeah. Any thoughts about that, Saleh? What do you think about learning all the time? Do you think we should learn all the time?
Yeah, it makes sense too. I don't think people really believe that they stop learning all the time. Everyone believes that they are always, well, most people, like the average person would say that they are always learning. But if they think they know something, then they won't want to learn about it, because if they think they're right, then they might be like, nah, I don't want to learn that. I want to learn something else. I was learning, but different things.
That's a really good point. We always tell ourselves stories about how great we are. We tell ourselves good things which are not really that true. Um, so you can test if you're learning all the time when, if somebody tries to debate with you and you're willing to at least listen to their point of view and try to give them a decent answer, rather than just be. I would say, if you're angry at them, straight away, it's like, why are you even asking the question? That means you're not humble, right? That's a good
Mm.
sign for yourself, right? Because loads of people, and by the way, most people don't keep learning all the time. And this is what another great psychologist said after 15 years old, most people do not change their world views, right? So that means very few people are really growing after 15 years old. That's most people. So you should assume you're probably not learning, and you should put yourself like under pressure and find out where you're not learning. Just assume you're not learning to begin with, right? I assume I'm not learning in lots of ways, okay, and I've got to keep working on myself. That's the best way. Rather, just assume, be hard on yourself, because our egos keep telling us lies about how we're so perfect and great and stuff, which we're not. Um, we've always got things to improve on. Cool. 6 seconds, 5 seconds. Cool. There should be a thank you message coming up now. Ready, steady. Okay, so thank you, Sala. I really appreciate that coming on my show, trying your best to come up with good points. And thank you, David and Jenna. That was awesome. Great questions. Thank you, everybody else, for watching the show. Please do press the like button. It helps kind of, if you think this show is useful for people. I do this show not for money, but because I think it makes the world a better place. And so I like if you press the like button, and then it would encourage YouTube to kind of spread the word about this show. So thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you if you liked the video and all this kind of stuff. If you don't like the video, if you've got questions, do comment below. I'm always checking out comments and trying to answer them, even from the non-live show. And yeah, sub, like, share, whatever. But also, please do join me next week. Ask questions. Thank you. Peace be upon you. Till next week. Bye.
Bye.